we almost put barriers on ourselves, and that can be a challenge, because usually your biggest breakthroughs come when you just take a bit of a risk and go for it, and you have to know when it's right to do that. And I've definitely picked times in the past where I've done a big risk and it's paid off, and other times when maybe it's backfired, and you can't just keep running safe all the time, because you won't ever improve or kind of figure out where the limits lie for you.
Hey, welcome to the Bodies Built Better podcast. I'm your host, Jackie Tan, and I'm so grateful you're joining me today. This show is all about human performance. I chat with athletes, experts, health coaches, authors, and so many more on all the best tips, tools, and strategies to help you perform at your best and discover your extraordinary potential. And today on the show, I chat with the extraordinary Izzi Batt Doyle. She has run at the Tokyo Olympics, the 5,000 meters, coming in with 15:04, and in her own words has some unfinished business with the 5,000 meters. She's also run at the Commonwealth Games. She made her marathon debut at the 2022 Melbourne Marathon and placed second. And not only that, she ran the fastest marathon debut by an Australian woman in 2 hours, 28 and 10. And then, of course, she goes on to PB that at this year's Nagoya Women's Marathon, placing 10th and dipping under the Budapest World Championships qualifier. She's doing extraordinary things and seems to be getting better and better. She's extraordinarily exciting to watch. And this was such a fun conversation. We do chat about the start of the year. She's had many events that she's run at and back and forth between Australia and Japan. So we talk about how she's managed that and the difficulties during the events, but also how she's recovered post runs as well. We also talk about the mindset around running, her transition from cross country to marathons. And we also dive deep into her coaching and how important community is, and building a beautiful community of like-minded people who are there to support you. And that is exactly what her and her partner Riley have done with Run as One. So this was a really fun conversation, and Izzi really gives us some juicy information into her training and how she really goes about her programs and working really hard to achieve her best. So enjoy this conversation with Izzi Batt Doyle. Izzi, it's so good to chat with you once again. Welcome back to the Bodies Built Better podcast.
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, it's been a couple of years, hasn't it?
It has. 2020. I've been waiting for this moment. And I just, since 2020, you've achieved so much. I mean, you've raced at the Tokyo Olympics, you've done the Commonwealth Birmingham Games, you made your marathon debut in Melbourne, running second, fastest marathon debut by an Australian woman, 2 hours, 28:10. And then you go on to PB that at Nagoya. I mean, you've done so much. And if I were to list all of your achievements, that would be the podcast episode. So we won't do that, but you've done so much since. When you hear that or look back on that, what do you think about? How do you feel? Have you given yourself time to reflect on everything you've achieved?
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, look, it has been a really busy 2 or 3 years, and I think I'm so caught up in it all still, and pretty busy and always chasing the next goal that it is hard to kind of reflect and actually, I guess, take in the magnitude of some of the things I've been able to accomplish. And it's funny you say that, because I do a little bit of cross training to supplement my running training, and I was on the elliptical just 2 nights ago, and I've got a big TV in my gym, and I often watch YouTube videos or Netflix or podcasts, and I actually watched the Birmingham 2022 5K race, and I don't often watch back my races, but it gave me chills to watch it and to see myself there. And yeah, it kind of was that weird thing of watching yourself at one of those really major sporting situations. So yeah, I think at times it does sink in, but a lot of the time I'm just kind of like cruising along, going after the next goal. And yeah, have to kind of really stop and pause and reflect on it.
Absolutely, because you've like there's so many great things you've achieved, and I can understand. Well, I don't understand because I'm not an elite runner, but I guess in terms of what's the next thing, you're always looking ahead, but it's so important. Like you said, even just watching yourself run, the chills that you get and how proud you can be of yourself because you work so hard.
Definitely. I think it's something that we all kind of probably struggle with, is actually like being really grateful for what we've already achieved and not getting too greedy and thinking about the next thing. When I ran my debut marathon in Melbourne last year, Australian running legend Steve Monaghetti was there, and he said to me, please enjoy this, like really, like, soak this up, really enjoy this achievement. And I took those words on, but maybe not quite enough, because already the next week I was just chasing down the next goal, and I'd forgotten the race already. But you do need to really
Really?
force yourself to just really try and soak up those achievements.
Yeah. Do you give yourself time to like, did you celebrate?
I did. We went out with the Runners One group in Melbourne and had a fun night, had a few drinks, and yeah, it was great. But I think it's just nature of elite athletes and high
Mm,
performers is that you might celebrate for 24 hours, but usually after a good performance, that's when you're most you're the most determined and most excited to even strive for better. So yeah, it's kind of that hard mindset, but it's why we're good at what we do, I guess.
exactly. And speaking of, striving for the next thing, do you think, like, in terms of how you finish, whether it's something that, you've achieved your PB, or maybe you haven't and you haven't been so happy with how you've run, like, what do you feel is, I guess, pushes you more to do better the next time round? Is it the chasing the PB next, or like what feeling do you get from your finishing? Whether it's I don't like
I
to
know,
use the
no,
word
I know
good or
exactly what you
bad,
mean.
but
Yeah.
yeah, like what
Well,
pushes you to get better?
I think, look, both do, but I've got two pretty contrasting experiences in my two marathons. Melbourne was my first one. I was really excited. I had an unbelievable result, really, running the fastest debut ever, and I exceeded my own expectations. I finished feeling strong. Like it was a perfect day, good weather. I had a friend run with me the whole way. Like everything went well, pretty much for a marathon. And I just finished that being so excited. Like I wanted to go to a marathon the next week. Like I was just so geared up and just felt so excited, because I felt like I'd just scratched the surface and there was so much more that I could achieve. So I was really motivated. And then my second marathon in Nagoya, I ran a PB by 16 seconds. But it was a really hard day. It was humid, hot weather for what you want for a marathon. I was alone for the last 13 kilometers. I had a hamstring injury that had been flared up 3 weeks before at the World Cross Country Championships. I was going into it a little bit uneasy about that. And I finished that race quite deflated, because I still ran under the World Champs qualifying time and ran a PB, but I missed the Olympic standard. I missed the ballpark of what I hoped I could run, which was more like 225, 226, not 227 high. And I was pretty deflated, but very quickly, within just a few hours, or the next day, I was already very motivated to get back into training, to target the next one, to line it up better. So I think both of them feed into the same place, but I think that finishing a race on a high note and feeling good probably leads you more quickly to think about the next one, because every time you feel good in a race, you just think there must be more. If I felt good doing that, then there must be more. Whereas when you have a average, mediocre, bad performance, you think, gee, that was so hard, I'm not sure if I can get it, I can push any harder than that.
Which is so interesting because even though you felt, let's just say, awful from that one, you still ran quicker
Yeah,
than the
yeah,
previous
yeah,
one.
yeah,
What a
yeah.
what a mind
But it was so much
story
harder. I
that
tell
is.
you what, those
Yeah.
16 seconds do not reflect how much harder it was. But yeah, it just goes to show. I think the marathon's such a great I guess, metaphor for life, really. There's so many challenges that you come across in a marathon, and so many things you can't control. And it is a little bit of luck and timing with some of the things. Like, it's not just about how hard you work and how hard you've trained. There's just so many factors involved. So you kind of just have to walk away from it and say, well, I control what I could control, and that's the result I got, and move on.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to January of this year. You've traveled a lot so far. We've mentioned Japan. You've been there a few times now. At the beginning of the year, how do you plan? Like, are you looking at the year and going, these are the races I'm going to do? Do you go even further down to actually, let's just look at the first quarter? This is the goal. Like, how do you plan your races?
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm lucky that I've got a really good manager, Nick Batt, and he works with a lot of Australia's high performing elite professional athletes. Sinead Diver, Brett Robinson, the Australian record holders in the marathon, Stuart McSwain. Yeah, pretty much the top crop of athletes in Australia. So I'm fortunate that I trust him, and he kind of almost sets my race schedule for me, and helps me gain race opportunities that are going to be good for me, and that are going to be, supporting my progression as an athlete, but also to try and make teams, and also to alleviate like the financial costs. So, you want to pick a race that's going to want to, pay for your flights and accommodation to put you up. So it's not that, you're forking out a big sum of money to go and do a race overseas, that sort of thing. But I think when you go back to January this year, obviously as elite athletes, the pinnacle is always representing your country at a major championships. So that's obviously Olympics, World Championships, and Commonwealth Games. So when they're on the horizon, that's always something of priority, I guess. And so we're coming into this time now where obviously Paris is on the horizon into the, 2024 next year, the Olympics. That's kind of like, you look at that down the road a little way. But at the end of this year, we've got the Budapest World Championships for athletics. And then there was the World Cross Country Championships, which were in Australia for the first time in, 27 years or something, in February in Bathurst. So ordinarily for Australians, we don't prioritise cross country so much because it works on the European schedule, and we're kind of out of sync with our track season and the winter there, and different seasons, but because it was in Australia, people really got on board with wanting to get involved with this World Championships. So I went to the World Cross Country Trials for Australia in January, and was fortunate enough to place fourth there and get top six, which was needed to make the team. And subsequently, I competed for Australia at the World Cross Country Championships in February. But amongst that, I locked myself in for a marathon in Nagoya in March. And I'd talked about that with my manager, Nick, late last year. It's just a good race opportunity. They're very supportive of us going over there. They really take care of us, pay for my flights and accommodation. It's known as being a flat course for a marathon, and usually good weather in Japan that time of the year. Unfortunately, climate change is changing things up, I think, a little bit, because it's getting warmer and warmer each year. But yeah, that was kind of like the marathon that I was going to do as my second one, just to build off Melbourne and look towards, where I was going to be heading into Paris and the World Championships later this year. And in saying that, with the marathon, often you would do a half marathon in the build-up to a marathon as part of the training block, but also, that's when you're training your system to be really an aerobic machine and really fit. So going and doing a half marathon is a good opportunity to test yourself. And so, yeah, I had a half marathon in Japan in February. So it became a pretty busy schedule of like cross-country trials, half marathon in Japan, cross-country world champs, and then my marathon in Japan. And upon reflection, it was a lot. And I think I always knew it was going to be a lot. And I had to kind of just accept that the racing was going to be a challenge, and I'd have to just fit the training in around it. And I wasn't going to have this perfect marathon block, which I might have wanted to have for my marathon. But in saying that, how could you pass up an opportunity to represent your country at a World Championships in your home country. So yeah, don't regret it at all. It was an incredible experience.
And you did incredible as well. I'd love to know when you like when all of those things come up for you and you go, yeah, I'm going to do them all. Does anything change within your training to, I guess, account for all the travel and the recovery?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think that training is pretty standard for me, like all year round. I could, a basic week is generally always the same. You just might adapt it a little bit depending on what races you're going into. And when I travel for a race, it just usually means I have somewhat of an easier second half of the week going into that race. And then I'm going to have somewhat of an easier couple of days coming off the travel and coming off the race. So, you might get a good week in, dip down, taper for the race, dip down to recover, and then hopefully come off that race fitter and having absorbed that harder effort too. But yeah, we kind of just keep tracking along. And days of the week change. Like if you have a race, you might miss your Sunday long run, so you do your Sunday long run on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and the week kind of falls into place. But I just try and listen to my body, listen to Nick, who sets a lot of my training, and chat to my partner Riley, who helps me a lot with managing the day-to-day stuff and figuring out how it all fits in. And it can be busy, but we love it.
Yeah, amazing. And because it was so busy, do you feel like you ran, really well the way you wanted to run in each of those events?
I think that that's the challenge, is that for me, I felt like I wasn't able to go to the well for all of those events because I had so many that I had to kind of spread myself across. So that is a downside of it, is like you can't push yourself to absolute, the nth degree, 4 races in a row in 6 weeks or whatever it was, 8 weeks. You really have to, you can really only go to that really dark and scary place, maybe once or twice a year. And I felt like I was more willing to go, all out for my marathon, because that had the most weight to me. Like I knew I needed to run a qualifying time, versus at the World Championships, I wanted to run well, and I ran as hard as I could to the conditions and to the course and to where I was at in my training and what I had coming up. But it was one of those days. It was 37 degrees. It was a really hilly, challenging course. 5 laps of a 2K, just completely up and down mud pit, like hay bales, chicanes, like this is the most crazy thing you can imagine. This man-made kind of course around this crazy billabong and hills. And we had one girl actually like run into a pole and then like collapse on the finish line. 2 in the medical tent, like one was throwing up bile, had like a bad liver count for like weeks after. So like you can really go to a scary place, especially with like the dehydration that comes from racing in that kind of weather. Whereas I ran it hard, but I ran within myself that I could get up the next day, go for an hour run, do a long run on the Tuesday, and get back to a marathon session by the Friday, 6 days later. And I knew I needed to be able to bounce back from that event and get a few solid marathon sessions in before I went over to Japan. So it's just about balancing it all and knowing when is the time to really push yourself. But I ran a PB in my half marathon in Japan, even though I wasn't, really fresh and tapered. Like I'd still done a fairly heavy training week going into it. But when you're fit, you can usually elevate enough on race day that you get the performance that you kind of, I guess, deserve. But I think that in hindsight, like I probably was, I probably would have been able to run even faster if I'd freshened up and really targeted each of those races. But then that kind of falls apart, the whole idea of training through and getting to your end goal, which for me was Nagoya.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to talk about, I mean, you said, describe the awful incidences with those other runners. How have you learnt to know yourself and know where your limit is? Like, you don't want to tip over that edge. How did you learn to to know that?
I think that it comes with, hours and hours of training and doing different sessions, but we do a lot of threshold running in our training. So once a week on a Friday normally, I would often do, tomorrow I'll do a 5K warm up, I'll do 10K at threshold effort and the 5K warm down. But threshold for me is running around my half marathon pace. It's a pace that an effort you could sustain for up to an hour if you needed to, or thereabouts. And I've actually had my threshold tested on like a treadmill, and you kind of know your heart rate number. So I think mine was like 173 is where I sit around threshold. And I've gotten so I wear a heart rate strap when I do those Friday sessions, and I can I look at my pace, but I also look at my heart rate data, and I also pay attention to my breathing and how hard it feels, and all those kind of internal factors. And I think I've narrowed in on that so much over the last 2 or 3 years of training threshold sessions, that I can very much sense when I'm on my line and when I'm redlining versus when I'm running a pace that it feels sustainable and that I feel comfortable maintaining. And when you're doing a race, it's like if you're doing a 10K race, it's about how you get through 10Ks, not 9.2 or like you have to manage your effort to get through that exact distance. So it is really hard, and that's why people when they see the finish line, they're usually able to sprint because it's that psychological factor of like, I'm almost done, like I've got stuff left. But it is about managing your effort, and I think that I've really honed into what my effort is, what like redlining is, and what is sustainable. And from doing more marathon and half marathon work, you really do have to find that line that you can ride for an hour or 2.5 hours. So yeah, for a race like the World Cross Country Champs, I just felt like I needed to settle into a rhythm that was hard enough, but not putting me at risk of not finishing the race or injuring myself. I know we talked about this a couple of years ago, but my last cross country experience was 4 broken bones in my foot back in college in America. So, somewhat thinking about those factors and just knowing that I needed to get through it unscathed kind of thing.
How much mindset training, how much physical training does it take to keep within that and not train or not run off to someone else's pace and trying to keep up with someone else? Like how much of that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And sometimes we almost put barriers on ourselves, or we think we need to stay at this pace or stay with these people because we're not quite, and that can be a challenge, because usually your biggest breakthroughs come when you just take a bit of a risk and go for it. And you have to know when it's right to do that. And I've definitely picked times in the past where I've, made a big, done a big risk and it's paid off, and other times when maybe it's backfired, and, you can't just keep running safe all the time because you won't ever improve or kind of figure out where the limits lie for you. But yeah, I think the more you do, half marathon stuff, you really have to be very focused on yourself and not run someone else's race. On the track, you can get away with it's better just to cover the moves, try and go with people until you can't, because you're trying to stay in the race. But in a marathon, in Nagoya, there were 2 pace groups, one going out at 2:26 pace and one going out at 2:21 or 2:22 pace. And it's very obvious to me, sure, I want to run 2:22 one day, maybe it's just almost the Australian record. But that's not today. So, I'm being smart by choosing the second pace group, which still would have been, a PB. But, it's hard in that moment. Of course, when the race starts, I could run with the first pack. I could probably get halfway feeling all right. But very quickly, I know that that's not going to be the place I need to be in. So it's just measuring your effort, knowing yourself, and trying to focus on what's going to be the smartest option for you.
It seems like you have achieved you've achieved incredible success as a marathoner, but it feels like it's happened in such a short amount of time. Can you tell us about the transition to becoming a marathoner and what you, I mean, I know what we see is only, 1% of what you're doing. So I completely understand that, and you're training a lot and really hard. But can you tell us about that transition and what you think, or what you can pinpoint the success to that growth and transition?
Yeah, I think since I was really as young as I can remember, the longer the race has gone, the better I've performed and the more I've enjoyed it. And so that was, going up to the 10K in college. And I made my first Australian team for that at the World University Games back in 2017. And I think since then I've always wanted to be a marathoner, or I thought I wanted to be a marathoner. And I was fortunate that when I linked up with Nick Bedeau, when I became a professional athlete and signed my contract with ASICS back in 2021, he's worked with so many marathon runners, and he saw in me and the way I was running on the track, yes, I think you'll be a really good marathon runner one day, because that's just kind of how you run. It's very even, very I often lose races in a kick down because I'm the one who's led the race and kind of kept the pace honest and churned the laps off, the same pace, lap after lap after lap. But I don't have quite the same speed as some other athletes around me. But I can just keep going and going and going. So I think I always had it in my mind that I'd be a marathoner. And I had the opportunity to do London Marathon last year, but I was struggling with a hamstring injury, and I'd been overseas for a few months, and coming off the Com Games, I couldn't stay overseas much longer. I needed to go home, and I went home, but I was presented with the opportunity. Well, you could do Melbourne Marathon. It's the same day as London, and you could just give it a crack and just see how it goes. Why not? And I thought, why not? I've got nothing to lose. I've always wanted to do a marathon, so I'll just do it. And I only had 6 weeks when I decided to do that. I'd come off Com Games. I had COVID. But really, I've been running 140 Ks a week for 2 years or 3 years now almost. And so it's this transition to doing a marathon. It seems really big and a scary jump, and it is doing something unknown. I think as adults, we don't often do things for the first time. Like it's a very strange experience when you're presented with something that you've never done before. It's quite odd. But yeah, I've been running, high volume for a few years. 5K and 10K track training. It's not that dissimilar to what I then did for the marathon. All that really changed was that my long run went from 90 minutes, 2 hours to 2.5 hours. And my Friday session, which had been a 30-minute threshold or maybe a 10K threshold, went up to a much longer session, about double the volume, usually about 20 Ks all up, of some kind of longer threshold intervals. But it was really only the Sunday and Friday sessions that jumped up a little bit, and everything else across the week stayed the same. So it's not this huge change in how I did things. It's not like, my whole week wasn't rewritten. It was just those small incremental changes, and a little bit more running across the week, but not that much. I got up to 180 Ks a week once in both my short blocks, but on average it was more like 150 Ks a week, 160, which is what I would do anyway for a 10K or what I was doing previously. So it's not a massive transition. I think it's more in the mindset really of being like, I'm going to be out there for 2.5 hours versus 31 minutes or 15 minutes, which is a very big difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think having done doing a couple of half marathons and doing those longer sessions and getting the long runs done, that gave me the mental confidence that I was prepared.
I would love to dive deeper into the mental side of things, but before we get to that, I've heard you say that you've got some unfinished business with the 5K.
Yeah, I do.
Tell us
I do.
about this.
Well, I mean, back in 2021 when I made the Olympics, I ran 15:04, and I would just love to break 15. I think I'm very much capable of it. I feel like I could have done it that season. I just didn't quite. I won that race that I ran my PB in, and I felt amazing, and I felt like there was so much more in the tank, which is what happens when you run well. And never quite. Yeah, I wasn't. Since that time, I've had a hamstring injury, and I'm finally getting it right again. But it's been 2 years, and
Mm.
it's really affected my ability to run fast. And it's been okay for doing the marathon, the half marathon, but I haven't really had that, I guess, leg power and force and kind of drive and being able to do speed stuff until the last couple of weeks. Actually, I've got back on the track and done some speed. But yeah, I'd love to break 15 minutes in the 5K. I'd love to shake up all my PBs really, but that one's
Yeah.
one I'd like to get it in the 14s.
Yeah.
And I also feel like I haven't quite nailed a 10K on the track. I've run 31:40, which I think puts me at like eighth all time Australian or something like that. But I just feel like there's a lot more there. And yeah, when I ran my PB, I was struggling with this injury, and I kind of went backwards in the last half of the race. And I just love to run another 10K where I feel strong, and feel like I get everything out of myself. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. While I'm focusing on the marathon, like I've definitely got goals on the track still. And I think the great thing about the way that we train and the shoe technology we have now, and just the more understanding we have of the body and recovery, there's no reason why you can't jump from the road to the track and still be competing at both. So I'm actually going to Japan next Friday. I'm doing a 3K, which is going to be my first track race of the year.
Oh, wow.
I ran the national 10K in December last year, but yeah, I haven't done a track race since then. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm not sure if I'll do any more than that one. It just the opportunity presented to go over, and I love Japan. I've been there 3 times this year already,
Yeah.
and I thought, what, it'd be good opportunities to have some fun and do a track race. It doesn't really hold much like weight to it in the sense I'm not feeling under pressure to perform in any particular way. I just want to run as fast as I can, try and run a PB, try and compete, and then maybe I'd squeeze in a few more track races. But I have run the World Champs qualifier in the marathon, so I'm hoping that I'll run the marathon in Budapest on August 26th. I'm awaiting confirmation on selection. I think into start of June, so we'll have to just wait and see. But hopefully, that's what I'll be doing at the end of this year. But yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see. Could be some track in
Amazing.
there too.
How are you feeling since having started the last few weeks, the real faster stuff?
Yeah, I feel great. Like it's been amazing. I've still been having shockwave in my hamstring. I just finished
Mm.
6 weeks of shockwave last week, and I'm managing it. And strength is the most important thing that I've found, is helping me keep it under control. And it's the things I've unfortunately, I let go at times when I was racing because I just was so busy and not wanting to get to like tire my body out too much, but also it backfires because the strength is what helps my hamstring tendon,
Yeah.
I guess, like feel good. But yeah, it's been amazing. I've been back on the track the last two Tuesdays, spiked up, running shorter, faster sessions, and I just feel really strong. It's been really a good confidence builder to run fast again and to have the confidence in my body that I still have that speed. I think, I've run some of my fastest 400s and 300s in 2 years. So yeah, I'm really excited to be feeling that way again. And it's just a different feeling, like when you're running fast.
Yeah.
I've gotten really good and really used to just like grinding out like long, steady. I know they're fast. Like running 3:15s, 3:20s is still fast, but
It's
like
pretty fast.
I'm talking like running on the track like under 70-second 400 laps, like really going at my top end speed. So it's a completely different feeling, and it's really fun to do it
It
after
must
not having
there
done
must be
much.
such a rush to that.
Yeah, it is definitely.
Let's go to the mindset now. I mean, you've obviously, now that you've experienced massive world stage events, Tokyo Olympics, the Commonwealth Games, but also you've had your fair share of injuries as well. When you think about, that mental fortitude, what do you take from your experience? What's been the most I mean, I guess it's all valuable, but what's really built that resilient mindset for you?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think the mindset is just so important. It's something that we
Mm,
definitely overlook. And I think a lot of athletes, like they've got all the physical tools and are prepared as physically as they possibly can be, but they get to the start line and I don't know, maybe they haven't thought out how it's actually going to play out when they're there, or they get a bit of imposter syndrome or stage fright or whatever it is. But I think the mental side of things can be what lets people down a lot. And I'm sure it's, been what's affected me at times too. But I guess I'm just so grateful every time I get to line up and compete. And I think that's having gone through periods of time where, you're not able to run or not able to compete. And just really coming from a place of like gratitude when you
yeah.
are given that opportunity. And a new technique that I've been trying to use recently is, I can't remember if it's got a name, but it's like, you on the start line and you can get really overwhelmed. For example, for me, I'm a really great competitor at an Australian level, and I've competed internationally. But when I get to an international race, I'm one of the I'm one of the people filling the start line. Like, I'm not in it for an Olympic medal. To be realistic. So, you can get there and get that imposter syndrome and go, oh my gosh, I don't deserve to be here. Like, I'm standing next to the world record holder in this event and, silver medalist at the Olympic Games last time in this event. And who am I to be, like, you can get really in your head. But what this new technique I'm trying to use is like, you zoom out from that perspective and you kind of look at all the things you've had to go through to get to where you are, and all the people that you've had to be at various state, national
Yeah.
level races, to be where you are. And it's kind of that zoom in, zoom out, zoom in perspectives, and then you kind of like zoom back into where you are and go like, no, I deserve to be here. Like, I've earned my spot here. And just trying to have that mindfulness and like presence of being like, I'm here right now and enjoy it and whatever. But yeah, just kind of like having that awareness of like how many people may be envious of the position you're in, or you've had to, overcome to
Work
get there. If
hard.
that makes
Yeah,
sense. Yeah.
absolutely. And I mean, that's a beautiful example of life in itself. Like all the obstacles and all the, you work you put into something to achieve that moment. You're there for a reason. And yeah,
Because
sure, you might
realistically,
be, go on.
oh, so, no, I was gonna say realistically, there'll always be someone better than you at
Yeah.
what you're doing. Like, whatever it is, you can find someone who's doing it better, probably. But if we get so caught up on being like, I have to be the best to be worthy, or to be like it just doesn't make sense. So yeah, I think it's really important to just like make sure that your focus isn't getting too narrow on just the field that, like, the people that you're up against
Mm,
right there and then, and you kind of like yeah, have that lens open up and see like the bigger, wider perspective, and then go back
yeah.
to where you are and go, okay, well, this is what I'm lining up against today, but all the
Exactly.
factors.
And it's also thinking about who you represent. I mean, there's so many young Australian girls watching you and going, "Oh, it is possible. I could do that one day." So,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's so important. I always think about the Runners One group, all the runners that support me and know me and inspire me, and I know that I'm inspiring them, and they're at home watching
yeah,
me. And yeah, as you said, like all the young girls and women who are watching and like might look up to myself or other athletes, in my position. And yeah, I think it's very important to remember the impact that you can have and not get so caught up on like, well, I'm not an Olympic champion or whatever it is.
exactly, exactly. I know you did your thesis on mindfulness. I'd love to know, what you practice and what you encourage your athletes to practice, and whether, because of your achievements since then, if that's changed anything in any way.
Mm. It's interesting. I think for a long time I thought of mindfulness as like something you had to sit down and do. And I think now, like for a long time, I wanted to be that person who like did meditation especially after some doing, spending 2 years doing my honors thesis on it. But I'm just not. I implement mindfulness into my life, and most of the time it's subconsciously now. But I think that a lot of the time for myself and for athletes that I coach, I had some ladies going off and doing the London Marathon, running their first marathon recently, and they're not trying to break any records. They were just doing it to complete their first marathon. But of course, they're nervous, and they're worried about all the factors that could happen. And I'm just constantly telling people and myself, like, control what you can control, like, enjoy the moment, like, when you're out there running and it gets hard, like, smile, because one, that sends endorphins to your body, but also it just makes you realize that you're doing it because you're enjoying it. That's like the whole point.
Yeah.
And take in the sights around you, like, look at the people in the crowds, look at the places that you're running through, and, like, I guess just, like, be present in the moment. And I guess I'm always kind of implementing little things like that into what I do, and to also what I tell other people when they're going they're going into a race, or they're just navigating training, or fluctuations in motivation. There's just so much we can gain from just trying to be present, being grateful for what we've got, and just really enjoying the moment.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, even when I guess a lot of the times, and I know I still do this, practicing being present and really in the moment and grateful for that moment, because, you miss out on that experience if you're in the future worrying about something, catastrophizing about something that might not even happen. I mean, what's the point of that? And then you've missed something that you've worked so hard for. So it's such an important message.
Yeah, and I went back and was just thinking about the Commonwealth Games, because I did two events there, the 10K and the 5K. And so I guess the background for that is I ran the 5K at national championships. I came fourth in a kick down, and I missed the spot. I ran 15:10.9. I had to run under 15:10 to get the qualifying time. So I'd missed the spot, come fourth. So I missed out on going to the World Championships, and that was really quite heartbreaking for me at the time. And I had this injury that I was trying to get right, and I couldn't quite get it right to go and run faster. But I made the Commonwealth Games for the 10K, which I was so grateful for, because I was having a really challenging season, being overseas, trying to keep racing with this injury and being away from home. And I was just really quite unhappy, and, really quite down, and not really enjoying what I was doing, which for me is not normal. And at the Commonwealth Games, I subsequently was able to do the 5K as well. But the 10K was the one I'd been selected for. The 5K, I just ended up getting a spot because one of the girls, the first qualified girl, Jess, she couldn't do both the 15 and the 5. So I got that spot. And I kind of always knew that I would likely get it, but it wasn't actually verbalized and offered to me until I was there in Birmingham. Anyway, so for the 10K, I hadn't raced for maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I was coming off trying to get this hamstring right. I was feeling quite not as confident. And I went into the race, and I just didn't even go with the front pack. I ran a really steady, controlled race. And I think I have to be proud. I ran 32 flat. It's not a bad time. It was my, I think, third or fourth fastest at the time. But I wasn't really engaged in the race, and I wasn't confident. I didn't put myself out there. I just finished having run okay. Very much a contrast to when I was offered the spot in the 5K. I went out there with nothing to lose, confident in myself, because it helped that I'd done this 10K and got through it okay, and walked away 8th place, and my hamstring was fine, and I was able to to enjoy it. But anyway, I went into this 5K. Just completely different attitude. I could see it on the start line when I rewatched. In the 10K, I was a little tense, happy to be there, but like it just looked like I was just along for the ride, a passenger on the track, on the train. In the 5K, I was smiling. I was waving at I was just a completely different person, and you could sense the change in confidence. And I raced really well in the 5K. I ran a really good time, and I came eighth in a really deep field. And I can just really, like, I can see that and just sense the completely different person that I was when I got to the start line. And I think that that's just so important, I guess, to remember, is like the attitude that you bring really is going to reflect the performance that you get and how much you enjoy it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such a interesting point that you bring up where you've gone back and watched it and
Yeah.
now and that then you've seen what it looks like and also obviously having felt it as well. Um, how do you then, using that knowledge go forward in every other race?
Yeah, it's hard. In theory, it's like, oh, that'd be good to do that every time. Uh,
Exactly.
but yeah, I think that one thing that I will always have to just remind myself is like um, our mind and our body is like naturally like geared to control us from being hurt, like physically and mentally, right? Like
Mhm.
our DNA like screams at us when we're hurting ourselves, like in a race. Stop, slow down, pull out, because
Yeah.
it's literally like it's trying to protect you. That's like what your body and your mind does. And I think just like knowing that now, like remembering that and reminding yourself that is really important when you go into a scary situation, whether it's a race or a meeting or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like your fight or flight is literally trying to protect you from danger. So it's just how you interpret that as positive or negative, or like good or bad. It's like, do you feel this feeling and go, oh no, like I'm so nervous, I'm so like whatever, or do you go, oh, I'm so excited? Like it's whether you frame it to yourself as like this like bad nervous energy or this like good excited energy. It's just
Yeah.
like how you frame it. So now, like I just, when I go to a race, I never expect it to feel easy. Like I know it's going to hurt. I know that my brain is going to at some point in the race tell me that I should pull out, tell me that it hurts, question why I'm doing it. But if you just are able to shut it down very quickly and go, oh, thank you, brain, for protecting me, but I'm good. Then you can move past that and just like, yeah, try and frame it in a way of like, yeah, it's just trying to protect me, but like actually I'm just excited, and I'm here for the challenge. That's something that I'm going to keep working on, because yeah, it's crazy that literally like every race that I do, I know I'm not alone. I will consider pulling out at some stage, and I never do. And if you're really injured, then like you should.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but it's just amazing how you can. The brain tries to trick you, but you can trick
Yeah.
your brain too.
Yeah, I love it's such a beautiful lesson, that change of perspective and coming back to trusting yourself, the work that you've put in and the fact that you've backed it up before.
Yeah, exactly. Have to like, we learn from experience, and
Yeah,
you can draw confidence in the fact that if you've done things before, you can probably do them again. Um,
exactly.
yeah, it is crazy how much mental strategy can go into
Yeah.
performance, not
Yeah.
just in sport, but in so many different areas.
I'd love to talk about the menstrual cycle for a moment because we kind of tapped into this back in 2020 when we first spoke, and since then it's really come to the forefront of social media, of science, and it's something that we need to continue to talk about. And I think it
Definitely.
was even Kate Campbell, who even said, we need to be talking about our period, especially as athletes as well. And I know you've been through amenorrhea um, a little while ago. I'd love to know your journey from healing your hormones, and yeah, that journey for you.
Yeah, so I guess like it goes back to like I got my period at a regular age and all that, but then pretty much for as long as I can remember, I had pretty infrequent periods, like I don't know, every 3 to 6 months maybe. And then when I was in college, I went on. a marina, IED, and so I think my period disappeared completely because you don't get any feedback of that like health, that you're getting a period every month, right?
Yeah.
When it goes away. So for me, yeah, there was no indicator of health because I wasn't getting a period because of being on contraception. But my whole life I'd been like a 3 or 6 month period, which I know now is, I think it's called like oligomenorrhea or something, rather like infrequent periods or whatever. So yeah, that's not good anyway. And I had a lot of bone stress injuries. My DEXA scans showed that my bone density was good. So I'm not really sure if it had to do with that, but all through my career, I had been told if I lost weight, I'd be faster, blah, blah, blah. And so at stages of my in my career, I'd say, like, upon reflection now, I probably had an eating disorder or just was suffering from disordered eating, and just like pretty poor habits in the sense of like, maybe you're just going through a few weeks where you're really trying to lose weight, but then you're not getting anywhere because you're making up for it in other areas or whatever. Just I wasn't particularly healthy, and I think that a lot of things played into that, like being really conscious of that and dipping in and out of like yo-yo dieting and that kind of stuff. Having poor sleep, I was probably just suffering from insomnia for a few years there, and a high stress load just from college and competing and living away from home and all that stuff. But yeah, I do think that all played into my injuries, and also not having a period played into that too. So I went off contraception because I wanted to get the feedback of knowing that I was like healthy or not. And it probably took me 2 years to get a regular cycle back, but I did finally. And I'm regular for me. It's like, I don't know, every 42 days, something or other. So it's not particularly it's not a normal cycle, like 28-day cycle, but I'm not sure who is normal. We're all a bit different. But yeah, it took me a while to get my period back, and that probably helped that I got so injured that I couldn't run for 6 months, that I like my body had to heal, and like I was never really skinny. Like I've never been skinny, and that's probably the issue, is that like I was suffering from disordered eating, but it didn't look like it because I wasn't skinny, like, or unhealthily skinny.
Yeah.
I was an athlete. I've always been an athlete. Like I'm
really
fairly
strong.
small, but I'm a stronger athlete. I'm not. I've never been. I would never think anyone would look at me and think that I was underweight. So that's a challenge because so often, like, you can't see, just because it looks healthy doesn't mean it is healthy. Yeah, but anyway, having this time off running, and kind of like allow my body to heal and just kind of go through a bit of a normal period of time where I wasn't putting my body under so much stress. I was able to get my period back, and yeah, I've had it for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years now, and it's been great to get that marker of health. And there are times when I haven't got it for 6 to 8 weeks, and you can kind of pinpoint, oh yeah, like I was training pretty hard there, I was pretty stressed here, and it makes sense that might happen if you're on the line like I am, and often not sleeping as much as I need and just doing too much. But it's good to have that indicator. But yeah, it's been something I've had to certainly work at. And now comes the difficulty of really the last 2 or 3 years. It's like I've gone through puberty again, because I'm like, it sounds weird, but I'm having to figure out like how to compete and train like with a cycle, because really not having a period for a couple of years was great, because I never had to worry about my period coming on race day or feeling really flat a week of training. So now having a cycle, I'm much more in tune. Like I track it on my phone, and yeah, I can definitely tell when I'm in my luteal phase and I'm pretty lethargic and low. And I've had a few races where I've just like had really average races purely based on my period and my cycle, and it's really frustrating because I can't pick when I'm menstruating, and I can't pick when my races are.
Exactly.
And I I don't know the answer, and I'm trying to learn more about it. I'm trying to like just take the information that I can and work with it. So yeah, it is a challenge. Like I look at it and go, oh shit, like I'm gonna be racing like my second day of my period. Like that
Yeah.
sucks. But
Yeah.
so often, like it won't always come the day that it's supposed to come anyway. So you just have to work with it.
Yeah. And I know you said you're still learning how to work with it, but have you, um, I don't know, do you tailor your training to it, or do you make sure that your diet changes in order to manage certain phases?
Not really, because I feel like because my period is still somewhat irregular in the sense I don't always know. I might think that I'm in a certain week, but then it comes a week late,
Mm.
and so it is hard. But I just try and really listen to myself. And when I am like when I'm coming, for me, it's like the week before, and then like day 1, 2, and then once I'm past that, I'm fine. But I
Mm.
get really crampy, really lethargic, like feel like I can't even get out of bed, kind of thing. So then training twice a day makes it pretty hard, or racing.
Yeah.
Um, but usually, like I take magnesium and zinc most days. Well, I try to, but I would just make more of an effort to make sure I am having them in the week leading in, because I know that can help. And then like I'll probably just I'll eat a lot of carbs anyway, just being an endurance athlete and being vegan. But I would definitely like just naturally eat more carbs, or like have more frequent snacks when I'm going through that period of time, because I just feel like I need it.
Mm.
And yeah, my dark chocolate consumption probably spikes in that
Increases.
period
Yeah.
too. and 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 with training, like I think if I know that that's coming into that week, like speed might be harder. So I might just be like, okay, well, I'm going to aim to do this session. But if I'm not feeling good, like if it's 5 seconds okay slower, that's okay. And there's a reason for it. Or it's like, I might have wanted to do two runs today, but I'm feeling really flat this afternoon, so I'm just going to rest. I think
Mm.
it's just like having more of a awareness that you might need to be more flexible in that week. And sometimes like I might still have the best session, in that period. So it doesn't make sense. It's not always it's not always that I'm flat.
There's yeah, like you said, you've really got to listen to your body and have that self-awareness to be able to be flexible and adjust, because I can certainly relate to, that week before, and obviously a lot of women can, that week before, where you do feel that dip in energy. I know when I go and do my strength sessions, I feel awful. So it is about adjusting and yeah, being really smart around that, and consuming more of those anti-inflammatory, antioxidant foods as well in that phase. Um, so yeah, such an important message, that self-awareness.
And I don't ask every single female that I coach, to tell me their cycle, but I do say to them, if we have a relationship where we chat through the
Mm.
month, like I will say like let me know, like if you are feeling flat and you need to we need to change things, or down it a notch for a week. Like I'm very much like want people to know that that's like it's okay. Like just because
Yes,
you've got a plan that's set a certain thing, like we have to be adaptable with our cycle, and
absolutely.
and speak about it more. Like I want to normalize being
Yeah,
like, oh, like are you not feeling good, like and someone to be able to say to me, oh yeah, I've got my period, like
yeah,
and I'll go, oh okay, like well let's just like cut it back this week, or let's take it a bit easier on this session, or like,
yeah.
oh, that makes sense why you weren't feeling good in that race, like that's totally fine, like hopefully next time you feel better, or like we
Yeah,
can put some
exactly.
strategies in to work with that.
That's right. And detaching yourself from the outcome as well, because during those periods that won't reflect your training or how you normally run.
Absolutely. Like this year, the World Cross Country Trials, all I had to do was come top six. So I felt pretty confident that I was going to make the team. But I was on my like worst day of my period for me, and I honestly didn't even want to get out of bed that morning. Like it was not great. I felt terrible, and I had to go and get the job done. But it was hard. Like it was really hard,
Yeah.
and I did not feel good. But it just you have to just show up and try and tick the box. But
Yeah.
sometimes just knowing that like I have to just do what I can, but it may not be as good as or what I want it to be, just because of the circumstances.
Yeah. And so talk us through that. Like, how do you manage that, in terms of the mindset, but also do you take painkillers? Like, are you allowed to do that? Like, how do you manage that?
No, I can take like Panadol or something. I'll probably just take a couple of Panadol, and yeah, like just I guess all the research I've kind of seen and like the anecdotal discussions I've heard and people speak about it is like your cycle can really affect your training, but usually it doesn't affect your racing, like competition. And this is like Paula Radcliffe broke the world record for the marathon on her period. Like
Yeah.
usually like there's enough factors on race day that you're challenged with, like, and your cycle might just be one of them, but it seems like usually you can kind of like still elevate and perform for a race, but
Yeah.
just on day-to-day training, it like that's where it affects you more. So I kind of keep that in mind, that like yeah, it's gonna affect me, but like I'm not gonna let it affect me for my race, kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
I know it might still, but like I'm not even gonna like let that kind of like enter the realm of my head too much,
Yeah.
because there are so many things I can't control. I can't control if like I get tripped, or
Yeah.
my shoe comes off, or like the person in front of me like pushes me, like whatever it is. Like there's so many
Mm.
things. So and I think as athletes we go into these race situations knowing that there are a lot of uncontrollables. So then you hopefully a period just becomes another one of them, and you kind of like forget about it.
Yeah.
But in training, it's much easier just to kind of like fo- focus on it. But also, you've got the ability to adapt and alter your training and go, oh, I'm not feeling good today, so maybe we'll just push that session until tomorrow. Whereas
Mm.
obviously, you can't do that for a race. So you just kind of get on with it.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously throughout your training, it's kind of the best, I guess, training ground for understanding how to manage that on race day. So trying different things throughout, your cycle and throughout the months can really, I guess, set you up for race day as well,
Yeah,
depending on how you
yeah,
look
for
at it.
sure.
Let's quickly talk about recovery. Um, you seem to be doing really well at the moment. So let's go physical recovery, but I'd really love to talk about the mental recovery and I guess emotional recovery as well, because like we've said, you've done so much during this year already. The highs and lows of the emotions of that as well. You need to recover from. So can you tell us a bit about how you focus your recovery in all those different aspects?
Yeah, so for me, I think like one of the most important things is that I when I head out for my training each day, I know the reason why I'm doing each session. So on a Tuesday, Friday, they're hard sessions. I'm going to push hard, but pretty much every other day of the week, like I'm just running easy. I'm running, listening to podcasts. I'm running, chatting to my training partners, and so for me, a big thing is running my easy days easy. Sure, on the outside, going for a 60-minute run in the morning and a 30-minute run in the evening, and maybe doing some gym, that doesn't sound easy. But to me, I'm running at a heart rate that is in the 130s. It's easy. I'm actively recovering. So I made the mistake when I was younger, and I'm sure people also do. And I see lots of athletes that run in our group and that we coach, and that just other athletes that I don't coach, doing a lot of things just moderately hard all the time, and that's the biggest trap. And it's, it's what we see, from social media and stuff, like no days off, gym every day, like hard, like, and hit training and this group training and that group training. But it's really about like measuring your efforts and knowing when to go hard, really hard, and knowing when you need to go easy. So for me, running easy is a really big one, and that's how I maintain my heavy training load and how I'm able to really elevate for sessions and for race day, without running easy between. Wouldn't be able to do what I do. And for context, I mean, my marathon pace is like just under 3:30 per K. My half marathon's like 3:18 per K. My 5K is 3 flat, but then I'm jogging at like 4:30 to 5-minute pace. So it's a good minute and a half slower than my race pace. So that's a huge one for me. And then between that, like I think the biggest thing is sleep. And I have an Aura ring, which tracks my sleep, and I've got the app, and that's helped me be a little bit more accountable, because I'm a fairly busy person, and with Runners One coaching, and with the Run House, our coffee shop, and everything in between, like I don't get enough rest. And especially that's because we get up at 6 a.m. coach before I go and train, and I just can't seem to get to bed early enough to get more than like 6.5, 7 hours sleeps on those nights. And as an elite athlete, I really need to be hitting like 8 to 10 hours. So sleep's something I'm working on, but I think it's so important. Like, and when I really need a nap, like I try and schedule in, I try to just come home and go to bed and have an afternoon sleep when I can. But I'm trying to get more of them in. And then like obviously good nutrition is massive, and I'm trying to eat more protein, because I feel like naturally I just tend to eat a lot of carbs because it's easy, and like, but then like I might look back and it's like, oh, I had toast for breakfast, I had toast for lunch, and then I like it's like so for me I pretty much have, I know, very boring. I'm trying to plan more, so like and trying to figure out what are like easy meals to make. And I've been having protein powder every day in a smoothie pretty much, whereas I used to have that only on like just after hard sessions, but I know I need more protein, so I'm trying to have a protein shake smoothie every day. And I also am just like trying to seek out like eating more edamame, tofu. I've always loved tofu and eat a lot of tofu, but can't have tofu in everything. So like just trying to find more pockets of protein to get in to help with recovery and feeling satisfied, and able to like repair my muscles from the damage I'm doing to them. And then massage obviously is a big one too. I would love to get more. I probably get a massage every 2 weeks. At the moment, sometimes it's less frequent, sometimes it's more. If I've got a race on, I might get some more extra treatment leading up to it and then after it. But I just feel so much better when I get a massage, and just get regular treatment. So that's a big one for me too.
Let's talk about coaching. I won't keep you too much longer. But back in 2020, when we first spoke, I think it was kind of just the beginning of Runners One. And in this very short amount of time, it's exploded to the point where you've opened up your own coffee shop. It is incredible. Tell us about this incredible community that you guys have developed.
So I guess back in 2020, like that's when it all began, with COVID happening. And we had a family friend and my mum who were running together, and they were training for a Chicago marathon, but then it got postponed because of COVID. And I guess I just wanted some directions and something to do during this period. And it grew from a few family friends. Over time, it was 20 people. And then we kind of opened it up after we realized, people were asking if they could come and join, and we needed to kind of like make it more of a thing. And now we have over 400 members. So that's been 3 years, coming up on 3 years. And it's pretty amazing, like to see that growth, and I guess to sit back and think about that now. I remember writing my goals for 2021, and I was like, oh, it'd be great to grow Runners One to 100 people. And then
Wow.
by January we were already at 100, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Did you know it would get that big?
No, definitely not. Like, and that's the thing. Like, I think I see a lot of businesses and startups and like people, you know, like I understand planning for things because you have to have a plan. But we could never have planned for what happened,
Mm.
and I think if we had set out to achieve what we have, it wouldn't have it wouldn't be what it is.
Mm.
And it's made it difficult because we're having to always play catch up, and our systems, uh, aren't built for like we're having to just kind of do things on the fly as we go
Yeah.
because it just keeps growing. And with growth comes more challenges and more issues.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like we just kind of put it out there and it just naturally grew, and we've never done anything like marketing or like we do
Yeah.
our own social media, which has been a big thing. But yeah, it's like it just kind of organically happened. I think that's the best way it could have been. And then now like we got to the stage where we were trying to get you know have a group run on a Sunday and go for coffee afterwards and book in for 100 people, and just wasn't really working. So Riley kind of like made a comment like, oh, it'd be good to have our own coffee shop. And I was like, yeah, whatever. One day maybe. And then like he's just such a go-getter that within 3 months, like we'd leased a place, we're doing renovations, and like it was happening.
That's incredible. I love that story. What do you put that growth down to? I mean, you've really you're so successful. You've built a beautiful community. Like every time I see any event at any event in the country, actually, there's so many people with their Runners One gear. What do you put that growth and success down to?
I think like I said, it being like an organic progression, and I think the main thing, like obviously Riley and I worked really hard in the beginning to get it off the ground and to like we were doing so much behind the scenes that people didn't really see, I guess, just to make sure it was maintaining the way it was, like putting up Instagram stories for 3 hours after going through all the photos on your phone and uploading them and tagging the people in them. And but I really think the sense of community is what's
Yeah.
been the biggest driver for its continued growth and success. And in running, like I don't think there was people often ran on their own or ran in small groups, but they didn't really feel like it's given people meaning in a different way, like in a community sense in a different way that I don't think really had existed prior to Runners One, at least here in Adelaide.
Mm.
No matter what level you're at, you can be running in a group. Where I'm running at the front,
Yeah.
and someone could be running, 8-minute pace at the back, like, but we're all running together, and it's just that sense of community that you're a part of something, and you don't have to be an elite athlete. Whereas in the past, it's kind of like you might have these small elite teams, but they're only for the cream of the crop and not your everyday runner.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the seeing all the images on your social media. It really is everyone from all walks of life, from all ages and abilities, and it's you can see that you've built such a beautiful running community, no matter, and
No, thank
anyone can
you.
be there. Yeah, it's
Yeah, no, it is
extraordinary.
good. And with the coffee shop, the Run House, like we're able to kind of have almost like not a clubhouse, but a place for people to meet and come together, and like after the session can come back and hang out if they have time, and maybe get to know more people in the group over coffee. And also,
Yeah.
obviously we also just see a lot of the community in the Norwood area there, from the businesses and the locals too, which is great. But yeah, just being a place where they can kind of feel like they're a part of something and there's a home base is really
Yeah.
nice too. I think it adds a lot of value to the group, and it's not just like this group of people who just rock up and run in the parklands together. We're like a community that you can really feel a part of. And I think, people love, like, when we put merchandise out with Runners One on it, like, it just flies off the shelves because I think people really like being a part of, like, feeling like they're a part of something, and actually
Yeah.
wearing the merchandise makes them, they might not know someone's name, but if they're running along, through the parklands and they see a Runners One hat, they'll wave, because it's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, like, I know you. And
That's so
similarly
awesome.
at events or at different, you might go to a park run somewhere and you just see someone with a Runners One shirt, and that's going to spark a conversation because you're like, oh, I know Runners One, or I run with Runners One.
Yeah.
Whereas if you didn't have that branding on, you wouldn't know that there was a connection there.
Throughout your career, I mean, you would have learnt so much from all your experiences. Now that you've got this business, what have you learnt from the people who come to you for coaching, who run these events, whether it's for the first time? Like, what inspires you about the people that you're coaching?
Oh, so much. I think that really what I've learned is that at the end of the day, we're all runners because we you know we want to see how far and how fast we can go, but we also just um, we love the challenge of, like, improving ourselves,
Mm.
and that can be across so many different levels. Like, that can be, a first time park runner, and that could be someone like me trying to make the Olympics. Like, no matter what level you're at, the values and the reasons why you're doing it are pretty similar. And
Mm.
I love that. And it is very inspiring to see people who are, balancing kids and work and different commitments and challenges, and still going after their goals, no matter what they are. My mom, she's amazing. She's 63. She's running
Is
marathons. She's still working full
awesome.
time, owns her own
Mm.
business. But, just I'm so inspired by seeing her go after and chase her goals. And at the end of the day, no one else really cares what time she runs in the marathon, but she's committed to running, trying her absolute best and putting in the work to get that result. And I just think that's so inspiring to see it across so many different levels. And I really get a lot out of coaching people and seeing them, reach new heights that they thought were never possible. And as I said, that can be as simple as someone running their first 5K continuously. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking or record shattering, but it's a huge achievement for someone to do that. For someone to run their first half marathon, their first marathon, or their 10th marathon. Like,
Yeah.
it's incredible to see what people, are willing to do when they put the work in and they enjoy it. And I think that's the biggest thing, really, is like, I love being associated and being a part of, a recreational running group, so to speak, because at the end of the day, it just reminds me that it should be fun, and
Yes.
we're doing it because we love it. And sure, now, like, I face the challenge of, I think for me last year, I struggled a lot because I'd become a professional athlete. I tied my worth to my results. I tied my income was tied to my results. There was so much more caught up in it than in 2021. I was just breaking records and running and enjoying it, having so much fun. And then it all got a little bit too serious and a little bit too tied up in my identity and my, like, yeah, everything really.
Mm.
I kind of, like, took the love away from it a little bit. And so
Yeah.
now, really, I'm working on just reminding myself that I'm doing it because I love it, and I've got great training partners now who remind me that all the time, which keeps it fun and keeps it interesting. And I think going into this next phase, going into another Olympic period, where I'll probably have a lot more pressure on myself, from myself, but from external sources too, to make the Olympics, because, well, I did it last time, whereas I didn't have that pressure last time. It was like, it
Yeah.
was unexpected and it was exciting. But I'm just going to have to keep reminding myself, like, at the end of the day, like, it's just running, it's just sport,
Yeah.
like it, it's a simple thing, and it's a beautiful thing, but you
Mm.
really have to keep it into perspective and just to really remember that, even if I don't achieve X, Y, or Z, I'm still a person with a lot of value, and
Exactly.
I can't hold my worth to my results.
Yeah, that's right. And that is the beauty of having such a beautiful group of or community
Oh
of runners.
yeah.
You get to see, you get reminded every time you see
I
them
could
that
I could run 107 for the half marathon and break the Australian record, or I could run 117 and they'd still think I was amazing. Like,
yeah.
and that
Oh, it's special.
that is really beautiful, and I think it reminds one thing that I've really been working on recently is like what you put out to the world is what you're going to get back.
Mm,
So, for example, like if I had come back from Nagoya and gone, oh yeah, that was really bad, like I want to run faster, I'm not happy. People go, oh, she's not happy. It wasn't a good performance. But if I go, oh yeah, like it was tough. I ran a PB. I'm really pleased. Ran the World Champs qualified. They're like, oh, that's really positive. Oh, well done. You ran a PB.
yeah,
It's all how you frame these things. Um,
exactly.
Obviously, it's how you frame it to yourself, but it's also how you verbalize it to other people, to social media, to the wider community. Um, and at the end of the day, I've just realized that it's way better to be positive. And personally, you get a lot more out of it, and the people around you get a lot more out of it. Like
Exactly.
there's always an opportunity to frame something in a positive way. There's never like it's pretty rare for something to be completely negative and not be able to find anything positive to say. So like now I'm just trying to look at things, look at results, or look at things that happen, and just like pick out the positives, because at the end of the day, like it just makes everything better.
Exactly. I love that. I love that message, and it's so important. And why would you want to be feeling negative, and that impact on your physiology is going to impact you in everything else. So why not take the positive approach and feel good? I love
Yeah,
that so much.
definitely.
Izzy, you're incredible. What's
Oh,
what
thanks,
the
Jackie.
rest of the year look like for you?
So as I said, I'm going to Japan next week for this 3K, which should be really
Yeah.
fun. I did just hear though there was an earthquake in Yokohama today, which is where I'm going. So
Oh,
hopefully we're all
really?
good.
Good.
Yeah, but now off to Japan next week, and then yeah, I'm going to do a few local like road races in Australia. So I'm doing the Launceston 10K in June, and then the Gold Coast Half Marathon in July. So I'm excited about those two events.
Great.
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be running the World Championships marathon in Budapest in
Yeah.
August, which is really exciting. Should be pretty amazing. And I'm also just got to figure out the timing, but there's also the World Half Marathon Championships in Latvia in September. So
Wow.
hopefully I can back up and do that. And yeah, we'll see. Maybe squeeze in another marathon before the year's out. But yeah, it's as you kind of asked me earlier, and I've had to kind of just almost take a step back from planning too much and
Yeah.
like just focus on
Put the
focus
reins on
on
it.
focus on what I can, what I know is coming up, and like just kind of I guess have
Adapt.
faith that like everything just will slot in
Yeah.
as it goes, and that's the thing about when you wait on selection for
Mm.
different teams and such, like you can't plan until you get that real final selection confirmation, until it's real. I think it was like 6 weeks before Com Games, I got the selection, and it's like, okay, parents, book flights,
Yeah.
book the
Yeah.
accommodation. So a lot of times it's on the fly, but that's the general
Yeah.
gist of the year ahead. And yeah, there'll be plenty of things that I won't see coming, and that's exciting too.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited for you. You're so exciting to watch as a runner, and I've, yeah, it seems like you're just getting started. It's very
Oh, thank
exciting
you.
to watch.
Yeah, I think that there's lots more ahead, that's for sure.
What is the big vision for Izzy the athlete, but also Izzy the person, the businesswoman?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? I think for me, like I see myself as being a lifelong runner. And I really hope that I'm able to compete on a really competitive international stage for, another 10, 15 years. We're seeing women running in their 40s. So, there's no end date to that, but I hope that I can keep enjoying it. I really want to push the boundaries for myself. I think I have a lot still to go. I want to strive for trying to look towards Australian records. The marathon, obviously, it's something I want to learn more about and want to continue to get better at. And, I've got really big goals there that I'd like to keep working on over the next decade. I guess with my, outside my own running, I'm kind of happy for those things just to kind of like tick along and take me in the direction of wherever they lead me. I thought I was going to be a clinical psychologist, and what was it, 2021, I dropped out of that PhD master's program, and here I am, and I still am very interested in psychology. And this morning on my run, I listened to a couple of podcasts on psychology podcasts, and I still, very much interested in that. So maybe I'll continue in that space in some regards. But for now, I'm really enjoying coaching and learning more about running a small business and all the challenges that come with that. So I'm not sure. I mean, I would have never thought to be owning a coffee shop and doing what I'm doing. So I probably couldn't tell you what's in the future for me.
It sounds like going with the flow really works for you.
Going with the flow is good. Really, I think that I really do want to prioritize my running over the next 5 to 10 years. And I'm fairly confident that's my focus. And like, as much as I love everything else I'm doing around it, I definitely want to keep trying to make sure that those things are helping me and not hindering my performance. I'll keep trying to prioritize Izzi the runner for the next little bit of time. But it's crazy. I'm not anywhere near ready to have kids, but that's on my. I'd love to have children someday too. I've just recently traveled to Japan with Jen Gregson, and she's got little Archer who's 10 months old. And he's such a cutie, and it's pretty amazing to see what these women around me are able to do as mums, and going through pregnancy, going through having the baby, and getting back into really high level sport. So hopefully I'll navigate that challenge one day, but I think that could be a few years away for me still.
Fair enough.
I've got a lot to get done first. You can do a lot once you've had kids, but I think that you need to be ready to make that decision when you do have kids, that that everything changes, and you have to be willing to accept that you can no longer be totally self-driven, that other factors are going to be more important. So I'm not quite ready to get there, but it is definitely in the plan for me at some stage.
Very exciting.
Yeah. And I also hope I can just continue to have like an impact on, obviously I want to run fast times and run in Australian teams and achieve, those success kind of marks. But I also really want to continue to have an impact on other people around me and continue to impact the community. And most recently, I was part of a women's run here in Adelaide, which was the first women's running event on the track that they did, and it was so fun. And taking photos and signing cards and meeting different people. It always amazes me when I kind of meet people and they look up to me in that way. You never see yourself like that. So kind of like it gives me, it's a bit of a funny one, but I do want to really continue to try and have as much of an impact as I can in a positive way on other people and on the community. So keep trying to figure out ways to be involved in that too.
Yeah. Well, you are having an incredible impact on a lot of people.
Thank you, Jackie.
Last part of the episode that I have sort of started to do, which I really like doing, it's that I get the guest, so you, to ask a question of this incredible listener. So if there was something where, whether it's in regard to what we've spoken about today, is there a question you would want this listener to ask of themselves, to get them thinking about maybe a different way to think about their mindset or their training, or just something that you think is important that they should question themselves on?
I think one thing that I think is always a good thing for people just to ponder is like why you're doing what you're doing, and just kind of knowing the reasons, the reasons that you're doing it, because sometimes we can get pulled in different directions, from different incentives or different variable things happening, and it can be easily you can be easily dragged away from the root of the reason why you began doing what you're doing, and whether it's the career you're in, or the hobby that you do, whether it's running, or it's a different sport, or it's whatever it is, just coming back to the reason why you started out in the first place. I think that can really help ground you, and not just ground you, but also remind you if you need to make any changes or alterations to what you're doing, or maybe it might show you that you've lost course a little bit. You need to course correct and get back to the reason why you started doing whatever it is that you're doing. And I think just like it comes down to just knowing your why for things, and that can really help you, because if you know your why, it can kind of lead you in the right direction and make sure you're staying true to yourself.
Absolutely. Izzi, this has been sensational. I think you're extraordinary, and I've loved every minute of today. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Oh, no, thank you. It's great to be back on the podcast. And as a keen listener, I'm very honoured to be back on.
That was Izzi Batt Doyle. If you want to be following her journey, make sure you follow her on her socials, all of those links in the show notes. And of course, if you're someone who wants to take up some running and not sure where to start, then definitely check out Runners One. Of course, it can be in person and also virtually as well. So they do offer that, all of that in the show notes, so you can get started on your running journey today. Thank you so much for joining me today. If this episode resonated or you enjoyed it, you're someone who runs and knows someone else would really enjoy this episode, please share it with them, leave a review, and of course, subscribe to the channel, because everything helps. Have the best day, week, month, and year. Stay awesome, and we'll catch you next time.